Nigeria has a history of violent elections tainted by accusations of fraud, but this election is likely to be particularly volatile and vicious because of the close nature of the contest. It's also developed into a power struggle between the majority Muslim North and the mainly Christian South. And this started when President Goodluck Jonathan decided to break the unwritten rule within the ruling People's Democratic Party to rotate the presidency between the mainly Muslim North and the majority Christian South. And this led to a wave of defections from the party to the newly formed opposition coalition, the All Progressives Congress. They selected former military ruler Muhammadu Buhari as their candidate. The likely close nature of the contest means there's going to be a violent reaction by supporters of the losing candidate, particularly if they believe that fraud has been involved. And it's worth bearing in mind that at the last election, when Buhari was again up against Jonathan, around 800 people died in violence across the north, and this was in a contest where he was beaten by almost 2-1. The opposition's chances of victory had appeared to be fading a few months ago as the PDP sorted itself out following dissatisfaction with Johnson's decision to stand again, and no new candidate emerged to challenge him. However, the APC has also managed to retain its unity despite being a loose coalition of four parties from very different support bases, and it held a very well-conducted primary in early December from which Buhari emerged as a victor. Now, he enjoys sort of fanatical support across northern areas, but he's hoping to also gain support from southern areas, helped by the parties now forming the APC. He's also hoping to capitalise on dissatisfaction with Jonathan's presidency, not least the failure to address the Boko Haram insurgency in the northeast. And although that's sort of outside the interest of a lot of people in southern Nigeria, they might be more affected by the fall in oil prices. Nigeria depends on oil for around 90% of its export earnings. The government's already signalled that austerity measures are in the offing, and this has also focused attention on the current government and the current president's failure to diversify the economy away from its dependence on oil, and its failure to put aside sufficient money in the excess crude account to tide Nigeria over situations like this. Buhari as well, from his time as a military ruler, has a reputation as being very harsh on corruption, and this is something that's been rampant under the current administration, and many people feel it's time overdue to do something about it. Boko Haram's already disrupted the election greatly because of its control of territory in the northeast. Amongst other things, this has led to the flight of around 1.5 million displaced people. Now, it's highly likely that only a partial election is going to be held in the northeast, and the National Electoral Commission has not signalled whether these 1.5 million people will be allowed to vote outside their home regions. Now, the perception is that most of these people would vote for the opposition, so if there's a close contest, the opposition loses, and they believe the votes of these people would have made a difference, this is going to provoke a violent reaction again. Now, it's also highly likely that Boko Haram is going to conduct improvised explosive device attacks in the northeast and the north, not least because its hardline interpretation of Islam suggests that elections and democracy are illegitimate. Now, it's also likely to leverage its limited support in the federal capital Abuja and the largest city Lagos to stage a major attack around the election to embarrass the government at a time when the eyes of the world are upon it. There are lots of violent risks associated with the election besides Boko Haram. Nigerian elections are notorious for the use of gangs of paid political thugs to intimidate opponents and voters and to facilitate electoral fraud. There are highly likely to be violent confrontations between these rival gangs during the election. Now, this applies not just to the national election, but also to some particularly vicious contests at the level of governor, senator and representatives as well. After the election, there's certainly going to be a violent reaction from supporters of the losing candidate, and that will depend very much on how close the election was. If Buhari loses, there will highly likely to be violent riots across the north as there were last time, but probably even more serious, particularly in the main cities of Kano and Kaduna. Now, if Jonathan loses, former militants from the Niger Delta have already signalled they're going to take up arms again, with the aim also of stopping production at inland oil fields. Now, if there's a resurgence of Niger Delta militancy at a time when Boko Haram's still running riot in the northeast, this is going to be a terrible inheritance for Buhari when he becomes president.